What's going on, everybody? This is George with Win Your Wealth, and welcome back to another video. So over the past couple of weeks, I've been having a lot of conversations with my one-on-one coaching clients. And a common question that comes up very often are tips on how to improve their credit score. And so in this video, I'm going to be talking all about the steps that you can take in order to improve your credit score and get to that elusive 800 plus. But first, I wanted to talk very quickly about why it is important to have a good credit score. The biggest reason why you want to have a great credit score is that when you go to buy a house, you want to make sure that you have the absolute lowest interest rate possible. As I mentioned in a previous video, which I'll link up here, just a 1% interest rate difference on a 30-year mortgage can result in over tens of thousands of dollars in savings. So I'm going to go ahead and start this list with the most important thing, and that is to have a good payment history. Although the different versions of how they score the FICO has changed over the years, the most important piece of that is actually your payment history. Now, this is incredibly important, especially when you're underneath that 3-year mark. So especially for young people and people who are new to credit, you got to make sure that you're always making at the very least the minimum payment. As a side note, on credit cards, I would never recommend for you guys to actually carry any type of balance at all. But if you absolutely can't pay it all off, make the minimum payment. The easiest way to make sure that you make these minimum payments is to do automatic payments. Usually it's as simple as going to their online portal and putting in your account number and routing number to your checking account and select a date to go ahead and make the payment. Here you can select whether or not you want to do the minimum payment, which I wouldn't recommend, or what I would recommend is to go ahead and pay off the current balance. One of the things that I do as well, just in case, every Friday I just log into my Chase account and my Discover account and I just pay things manually every single month. So another reason why I do this Friday ritual is because of number 2. And that is because the second most important thing is your credit utilization. So let's imagine that you have a couple of credit cards, and as a whole between all these credit cards, you have $1,000 in credit limit. A 100% utilization would mean that you currently have a balance of $1,000 across all these credit cards. A 100% utilization would mean that you are using $1,000 out of that $1,000. If you had a 50% utilization, then you are using $500 out of the $1,000. That's better. But ideally, you want to keep your credit utilization below 30%. So you total up all of your credit limit across all your credit cards. In this example, $1,000. You don't want to have more than a $300 balance at any point in time. So if you're using your credit cards a lot and you have a lower total credit limit, it's very likely that you're probably going to cross that 30% threshold a couple of times a month. So in order to avoid that, my recommendation would be to go in every Friday and just pay off all your credit cards. That way, you're always making sure that your credit utilization is underneath that 30%. Now, at a point when you start collecting more and more credit cards and your income goes up and your credit limit goes up, you're probably not going to need to do this Friday ritual anymore. Because now at this point, your credit limit will be maybe closer to $30,000 or $50,000 at some point, and 30% of that is quite a large amount of money. I personally have already hit this point, but because of my paranoia, I still go in every Friday and just pay off every credit card manually. But I still have auto payment in there just in case. Now, a disclaimer that I want to go ahead and throw in here is that there are actually different versions of FICO. Right now, we're currently on version 10. However, not many banks or lenders actually use version 10 yet. Many of them are still using something like version 7 or version 8, or maybe even version 6. And as a result, that's the reason why your credit score is going to vary based on the bureau and based on the bank or lender that you're dealing with. So even though these first two things have always been of the utmost importance, this might change in the future, but I really doubt it. Now, the other things that affect your credit score are a little bit harder to control and just take time. So for instance, the age of your accounts, there's nothing that you can actually do about that other than just wait for time to pass and make sure that you're making on-time payments and keeping that utilization low along the way. But one thing that I do want to make sure that you understand is that when you pay off an account, it's very likely that your credit score is going to go down a couple of points. But don't let this discourage you from paying off personal loans or high interest car and student loans. You definitely want to make sure that you pay those off. Just understand that temporarily it's probably going to reduce your credit score a little bit. You also tend to be rewarded, although very slightly, if you have different types of debt. So if you do have student loans, if you have credit cards, personal debt, or something like a mortgage, you do tend to get a slight bump, but it's not very much. I definitely wouldn't go out of my way just to get other types of debt in order to increase your credit score, because it's only going to do it by a few points. My general recommendation to building your credit score is just to stick with credit cards. On another note, I wouldn't recommend for you to ever close a credit card. Even if you've determined that this credit card isn't worth your while to use anymore, it is important that you keep it open just to keep and maintain that credit history. So let's just say you have a credit card that has an annual fee that you no longer want to pay. You want to make sure to call the bank and ask them if there's a way to actually downgrade that credit card to a no annual fee credit card. Now, aside from that, if you just have a card that you don't want to use that's a no annual fee, just put a very basic subscription on it. Maybe put your Netflix, put your Hulu subscription on there, then just put it on auto pay and throw it in your sock drawer and forget about it. And the reason you want to do that is because if you don't use a credit card for 6 to 12 months, most of the time they will close the account for you. And regardless of whether you close it or they close it, it will actually negatively impact your credit score because all of that good credit history goes away and suddenly your credit utilization becomes higher because you have a lower overall credit limit. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. What if you have stuff that has gone into collections or you've made late payments? If you have debt collectors calling you about an old debt that you haven't paid, I would first advise you to continue paying off the debt that you have that's current. Once you pay off that debt or only have very low interest rate debt underneath 4%, I would then tell you to go and handle those collections. You may be surprised to learn that collections don't always affect you the same way. And what I mean by this is, again, depending on the lender and depending on the version of FICO that they use, collections that are paid versus collections that are unpaid may or may not affect you. But all in all, if you have a collection that's been paid, that usually doesn't reflect negatively on your credit score anymore. However, as I mentioned previously, if you have lenders that are using some of the older versions of FICO, it may still affect you. And the hard truth is that sometimes you just have to wait 7 years in order for some of that stuff to fall off your record. But ethically and morally, I really do believe that if you have a debt that needs to be paid, you should pay it. But there is a way to do this in a smart way. What you need to know about collection companies is that what they do is they buy bad debt at a very, very low price, maybe somewhere around 10% of what you actually owed. So if you had a $1,000 debt that you never paid, they probably paid anywhere from $75 to $100 for that debt. They then take on the risk to go and call you and harass you and try to get that money back. But because of this reason, you are actually at an advantage. And that's because they know inherently in this business, they will probably not get their money back. So you're able to put them in a position where you can say, and you can call them up and say, listen, I know that I owe $1,000, but I have $300 on me right now. And if you can get me a written approval letter from your manager saying that $300 will completely close out the account and consider the account fully paid, I will pay you today. This is not going to be an easy fight, but over time, you will be able to negotiate that price down. So you offer them in cash what you have, maybe 30% of whatever your debt was, and just tell them straight up, I have this money and I can either pay you today or I'm going to pay somebody else today, but somebody is going to take this money and that means that you may never get paid. So talk to your manager, tell him that does he want $300 or does he prefer me to give it to somebody else? You got to play hardball like this when it comes to collectors. As a part of this negotiation, you should also request that this bad mark be removed from your credit score. Unfortunately, this is something that's sort of in the gray area for these type of companies. They're technically not supposed to mess with accurate information on your credit report. However, some of these companies are sort of wishy-washy and will do it in order to get the money. What you can also ask for a couple of months later once your credit score improves is called a goodwill deletion. Again, not all companies are going to do this, but you may as well ask and see if they can comply. Once again, this is one of those things that doesn't always work, but it's always worth asking. Another practice that you can utilize, and you want to make sure that you do this as ethically as possible, if you pull your credit report and there's something there that you believe to truly be inaccurate, you can dispute that. And these companies only have a certain amount of time to respond to this dispute before it can actually be removed completely from your credit report. And this is the last thing that I have to say about collections. If you have something in collections that's close to 6 years and just about to fall over that 7-year mark, although this is something that I wouldn't personally do, you may want to consider just not paying. And the reason is because after that 7-year mark, that stuff is not supposed to be reported on your credit score anymore. And if it is, once again, you can go ahead and do a dispute. I personally feel like if you've ever borrowed money and you owe somebody, you should pay them back regardless of the time. Just know that if you follow this ethical advice, that negative mark may linger around in your credit report a little bit longer than you wanted. So as some of you may know, my credit score not so long ago wasn't that great. That was not because I didn't make on-time payments or anything like that, but because I had made the mistake of closing all of my credit cards. So I did that with the intention of going to an undeterminable credit score. However, that never happened. I discussed it in another video that I made about bad Dave Ramsey advice. But one of the tools that I learned about and I used was this website called self.inc. And essentially what this website does is it allows you to create essentially a contract with them that you will be paying them a fixed amount of money for a fixed amount of time. They will be charging you an interest rate in order for them to make money. Essentially what you're doing is you're making payments to yourself, because ultimately this money is going into a CD, and after an allotted 12-month period or 24-month period, you will get that money back minus the interest fees for self. It's a pretty interesting way to work on your credit score. I don't know if this was specifically what made my credit score go up, because I was also doing quite a few other things as well. But I really do feel obligated to mention it because it could have been one of the reasons why my score went up so quickly. So I'll have a link to self.inc in the description below if you want to check it out. The last tool here that I want to mention is the Experian Credit Boost. This tool is not something that I've personally utilized myself. However, some of my clients have used it in the past and it has helped them bump up their credit score a little bit. Now, from what I've heard from other people is that the better your credit score, the less this tool actually helps you. So what this tool actually does is it looks at your utilities and your rent payments, and it takes that information and it applies that to your credit score. So if you've been making on-time utility payments and rent payments and your credit score just needs a little bit of a boost, I would go ahead and recommend using this Experian Credit Boost. I'll go ahead and put a link to that as well in the description below. So aside from that, guys, the truth is that building a credit score can take time. This all depends on your situation and your past history, but absolutely nothing is set in stone. And what I mean by this is that if you want your life to change, if you want your credit score to go up, all you have to do is be disciplined and just do it for a long period of time. Just remember that time is going to pass by anyway, so you may as well be doing things to better your future. And trust me, your future self will thank you for all of that discipline, because as a result of that discipline, you are going to be saving yourself tens of thousands of dollars on your mortgage and large purchases in the future. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys found value in it, be sure to smash that like button and hit that subscribe button for more stuff like this. If you have an interest in doing one-on-one coaching with me, feel free to check out that link in the description. But for now, take care and have a great day.